Hi, Eric Gibaud, ericgibaud.com, and today I'm going to speak about vintage lenses, film lenses used on digital cameras. Many people ask me about it, so finally I make a video about this. Let's start. First, when we speak about vintage lenses, I speak about film lenses, old one, but before. Because now we've been almost 20 years, or yes, 20 years in film, in digital photography. So people think maybe he speaks about something 15 years ago. Well, vintage is minimum 20 years, but I refer to older lenses and not last generation film lenses, although you can actually use them. But I speak more about older lenses. So many people ask me, is it good, is it not good, what should I do, what can I do, all that. So first we're going to see the pros and then the cons. Pros. Well, first pro is price. Very often people see that a really good film lens, you can find it for $80 or 50 or less. And you think, well, that's incredible, because nowadays a similar lens in digital is about maybe sometimes 10 times the price. So I cannot afford that, but I could afford a film lens if I could mount it on my camera. So this is one of the biggest pro, is the price. Second pro is the amount of lenses. For example, in my case, with Micro Four Thirds, I've got all the Olympus lenses, I've got the Panasonic lenses and Leica Panasonic lenses. Some other brand also make some lenses like Sigma or this. Maybe I've got 100 lenses available for my system. But if you look at older vintage lenses, then I've got thousands. So I have really a lot of options to get a lens I like. So this is great to have plenty. But maybe you say, what do you want to pick among 1,000 or 2,000 lenses? Maybe it's hard to choose. So what do you need that? Well, that maybe you don't need it, you just already have the lenses, or you got it from your parents or your grandfather or whatever, or you used to do film photography and you have the lenses already and you want to use them, so you don't have to choose anything, you just have them. But the fact that you can use them is nice for you. And so there is also some countries where it's very hard to find present lenses, and they're very expensive. So I don't know, this video is in English, or I'll speak about countries, African countries where they speak English, or India or Pakistan or wherever. Maybe these countries, it's easier for them to find an old film lens, affordable than a digital lens they cannot pay, or they just cannot find it. So this is a great option. And then there is the romantic and personal reasons. This lens was used by my grandfather. I would love to use it on my digital camera. Or this lens, I used it 20 years ago, would like to use it again. Or maybe technical side. I like the look of vintage lenses or film lenses, and I want to have the same look on my digital camera. But this is a bit different, because in digital, when you develop your RAW anyway, your raw file, maybe what you gain on one side you lose it on the other side, or vice versa. So it's not that clear that you would exactly get the same look. It's not always the way it works out. Okay, so or the color rendition in RAW you can rectify anyway. So that's not, I don't think this is the main criteria for that. Or it was not as sharp, but maybe you can do less sharp in post-production anyway. So it's not. It's more subjective, that part. So these are the pros. Now we're gonna see the cons, or actually what you need to have this to work. So first of all, you'll see that mounts, bayonet or screw mounts, have changed over the years. So there are some brands like Nikon, the last generation film, or even older, you can actually mount it in digital camera. You can mount it with a problem. You don't need to adapt it, you don't need a ring to mount them. Some older one, yes, but not always. But there are some brands like Canon, they've changed several times. Or if I take an Olympus film lens, I cannot mount it on my Micro Four Thirds. It doesn't work. So most of the time, you're going to need an adapter ring to be able to mount a lens, an older lens, on your camera. Most of the time, because it's different brands, but very often it's not different brands, just different mounts. So I think the lenses that people most look at is called the M42 mount. It was like almost universal mount at that time. It was really used a lot, and the M42 is really interesting for many people. So there are many rings to be able to mount on your camera. You need two things. First is, what is the lens mount? It can be M42, it could be other like a Canon, and you want to mount it on a Sony or things like this. And what is your body brand and body mount? Like Canon, they have Canon R, they have Canon EF, Canon EFS, Nikon, they have Nikon FX, DX, although it's the same mount, and you have Z, for example. So, well, you need to know both things. In description, I'm going to put links on Amazon of rings to mount M42 mounts, because this is what most people ask me. So I'll put links for rings for Canon, Nikon, Fuji, Olympus, all that. Okay, a Micro Four Thirds and well, everything you can imagine. Okay. So when you know that, you will see that there are many brands and many type of ring. There are some very cheap brands, like for 10 euros you have an adapter ring, or 10 US dollars, and other ring they cost like $200 or $300. And you say, well, why is so much difference? Well, first of all, the precision of mounting in digital is really important. A few micron and then the lens doesn't react properly, the focusing is not where you think it was, or it's not uniform, or if it's a bit moved, it will be sharp on one side, not sharp on the other one. So it's important to have a good ring. So I would not go for the cheapest, but I would not go either for the most expensive, because if you're going to spend a fortune on a ring, why don't you buy an expensive lens straight away and present lens? Unless you already had it and you really love that lens, and for sentimental reason or whatever you want to use it, or you have a Leica M lens that is very expensive and you think I want to use it, so yes, it's worth paying for the very top ring. But otherwise, if you buy a $50 lens, why are you going to spend 200 euros on a ring? That's nonsense for me. You do what you want, but for me that's nonsense. Okay, so don't get the cheapest, but don't get the most expensive. And then there are some rings that do different things. First of all, take into account that digital bodies, they communicate with the lens for the autofocus, for the aperture, for many things. And now you have no communication. So it means that when you mount your ring, your lens on the ring and then on your camera body, it won't be able to make autofocus. It won't be able to do many things. So that's a bit of a problem. So if you have a basic ring, on a mirrorless, you're able to activate the focus peaking and you will know if it's in focus. But on a reflex, you won't know. I mean, you will look through the viewfinder, you will estimate is it focused or not, but you won't know actually if it's in focus. So there maybe you can put a split screen or this, but we get into more money and more money and more money when the idea is not this. And there are some rings that have a chip that make focus confirmation. So when you actually make the focusing manually, it will do tit when it's in focus, when you think it has to, when on the spot you're using. You know? So this way you're clearly more advantage. You clearly know where it's in focus. Some rings give you that. There are also some rings that do like a booster that corrects some the ray of light, and I'll explain that after. And they also give like more light in there, like you get one stop extra light. but they are a lot more expensive, so maybe it's not worth getting that. So there are many rings, but I would go for the simplest one. If you have a reflex camera, obviously one with focusing confirmation chip, and if it's mirrorless, well, a ring that allows you to mount and good quality, so it's well adjusted, and that's it. Okay, so now you have your lens, your vintage lens, you have your adapter ring, and you think everything is fine. Well, I've got bad news for you. That's not that simple. Why? Because on film photography, the way the light hits the film is different from the way light hits a sensor. So it means on one side it will work properly and the other one not that good. So I'm going to make a small drawing for you, and I'm going to draw you a film, a sensor and a solution. Okay, so when we speak about film camera, here's the film. Okay, here are the ray of lights going through an analogical film lens. 100% of light reaches the film, 100%. So that works fine. But a sensor is not like this. A sensor is like some small holes like this. Okay, and light needs to travel inside to reach where the light should go to make the picture. So when we put the analog lens, you still have the ray of light going straight in the center and sideways on the border, same as here. So if I get 100% here of light, in the center of the sensor I do get 100% of light. But on the side, it doesn't travel properly. I had to turn here. So maybe I get 50% of light. It means that on the border I get less light than in the center. So this means that I will get some vignetting. Very often one, including two stops, less light. So all the side of my picture will be darker. And also, the way it travels doesn't work the same distance. So it means it's almost impossible to have the whole picture focused evenly. It means on the border, if you focus in the center, on the border won't be in focus. So this is a real problem. Your lens will not work properly on digital. So what have they done? Our camera makers, they've created digital lenses. Here you have the sensor, and they correct the ray of light. And they all get perpendicular, so they all reach the bottom. So when you get 100% here, you get 100% in the sensor. Well, not exactly 100%, because you see that on a really wide angle you do get some vignetting if you had a fully open aperture, but well, more or less we'll say 100%. So this is why this works. So this is actually why APS-C sensors were invented. Why? Because when Canon, Nikon and others, but mainly those two, started doing digital, their clients already had many lenses they were using on film. Well, I put my lens, my film lens on my digital body, and here I go. And then they realized that there was problem on borders. What did Nikon and Canon did? They said, okay, we're going to use the good parts. As when it travels in the center, it's more or less straight. There's not that many problems. We're going to take out what's bad. So make a smaller sensor, and we use the center. So the bad part is out. So thanks to that, they could sell the digital camera. But then many people obviously wanted full frame to, as they said, no, when I use 50mm, I still want my 50mm. I don't want a 75 or an 80mm equivalent. So I want native. So the story was very often was no, because it's really hard to make a full frame or big size sensor, because you know, when they make sensor, they don't make a small sensor. They actually make like a big part, a big board of sensor, one piece, and then it's cut to size. So obviously there are always some defects, some defaults, some faulty parts. So it's harder to get a big size without any faulty part than a small part. So obviously it's easier to get an APS-C without faulty parts than a full frame. This is actually why medium format sensors are so expensive, because it's harder to get that size, well, actually that size okay than that size okay. But really that was not the reason. The reason is that their lenses did not work properly and they didn't want to tell it. So what they did was get APS-C out to give the engineer a couple of years or 3 years or 4 to develop new lenses to be able to correct the ray of light and work properly on digital cameras. And actually, if you look at it, the first lenses they corrected were wide angle. Why? Because what I'm telling you is really noticeable on wide angle lenses and not as much on standard or tele lenses. So when you look at Canon, for example, one of the first they get out the 105 millimeter with the Canon 5D, but that like a new lens. That was not a brilliant lens, but well, that was first one thought for full frame in digital. But then they remade the 2470. That was a big hit lens, and they made it new, Mark II, especially for digital. And then they all changed this. And actually, the 135 millimeter f2, that was a brilliant lens, did not give that many problems, because when it's a tele lens, most of the ray of light goes straight in there, so that was not too much of a problem. But then all the makers, they remade their new lenses. Even Leica, I remember having the M8 on all the lenses. It was a disaster. So on the borders and everything, and they had a crop factor of 1.3, and then they started to remake new version of their Leica lenses before they got out the M9 that was full frame. They all had to do that. And actually, if you have an old Leica lens, the best thing you can do if you're going to use on digital is send it to Leica Tech, and they will adjust it especially for your camera. But even this, on borders, it will not work as good. That's reality, even if some people don't seem to know about that, but that's reality. So this is why APS-C was invented, because they needed to have the good part of the lens to work. Same thing on medium format. Medium format nowadays is not as big as medium format then. You don't have a 6x9 sensor or a 7x9 sensor. You have a 6x45, the most expensive one, and the rest is even halfway between full frame and what was 645, which is the baby full frame, the baby medium format then. Okay. Why? Because their lenses, to render properly, they cannot use the whole thing. So they would need to make new lenses, more expensive lenses, and now 645 is accepted as the largest medium format there is. If you look at the Fujifilm medium format, is not even as large as this. So really, this is the main problem. Are they good, these lenses? Well, if you're going to use 50 millimeters upwards, yeah, you get fine results, but I do recommend you use them on APS-C or Micro Four Thirds. On a full frame, then I would not look at 50 millimeter, but probably 85, 100 millimeters to have the ray of light straighter. Okay. So can I use them? Well, I think this is a great option. First, as I said, for mirrorless, but second, I think it's great for portrait. Why? Because in portrait, you're normally not rushing, so you have time to do manual focusing. And if you use on mirrorless with focus peaking, it's really easy, and you know it's perfectly in focus. Second, on portrait, normally what's on the border is out of focus anyway, because you want to have the person in focus and the rest more in a blurry part. So the fact that it's not as sharp, or even there is some vignetting, is not really a problem for you, because that part will be blurred anyway. So many people use that for portrait, and I think that is a really good option. Actually, there is a Takuma 52 or 55 millimeter. I can't remember. Takuma is Pentax. This is a brilliant lens. I tried it on the Fujifilm X-T2. The quality is incredible, and it costs like on eBay, maybe it's more expensive now, but at that time it was like 60 euros for the lens, and an extra 20 for the adapter ring for Fujifilm. And for 80 euros you had a brilliant lens. And when you look at a 50mm 1.8, it's a lot more expensive than that for Fujifilm. Or if you get if you think about other reflex cameras, like you want to put a Yongnuo 50mm 1.8, which costs really nothing, 40 euros or something like this. The quality is really bad. So you get good quality at f8, but not at 1.8. This Takuma is sharp at f2. So if you really want to get good results for a good price, this is a great option. I speak about on Fujifilm. I've seen it also, a similar one. I think it was that one also on a Sony Alpha 6000. Great results. So this is a good option. So for portrait, for budget lens, this is probably the best option. Then there's also another option, like if you want to do some correction for architecture. If you get a lens with, you can actually change the focal plane, like the Canon, I think it's a 17 millimeters, and there's 24 also. It costs like 1,800 euros the lens. It's very expensive. So you could say, I get a medium format Hasselblad lens, 40 or 50 millimeter. Then there is a ring for Hasselblad that allows you to decentrate and correct the plane, the focal plane. So it means you can actually use it to correct perspective, all this in architecture. And then you put this ring on a ring for your camera. So maybe altogether it comes out 500 or 600 euros, but it doesn't cost 1,800 euros. You can actually you have a tilt lens for an affordable price. So that's another option. But still, I think these lenses for portrait are better to be used on APS-C or Micro Four Thirds. Honestly, I think you will get better results because you only use the good part of it. One tip, if you want to buy a lens, second-hand lens, obviously, well, probably, because if you speak about that old, it's probably second-hand. Always buy with a condition you can send it back and get your money back, because there are many bad lenses that are really in bad condition. And second, how to pick it. Most people, they get the lens, they look through on the sky and say, oh, that's nice, it looks okay. No, you don't look at the lens this way. Get your phone, switch on the flashlight, look through, and you'll see every scratch. If there's some mushroom in there, you will see everything. If there are some scratches, it's not a problem. Don't worry about that. A few scratches is no problem. But if there are many scratches, yes, it's a problem, because you get some micro flare and the lens will be less contrast. So I advise you, a few scratches, okay, many scratches is a problem. But if there are some mushroom in there, even if the seller tells you, no, but they've stopped, they've never been more than that, it's no problem there, don't buy it. Any situation of different humidity or different heat or whatever, then the mushroom will start growing again and will ruin the lens. If you already have the lens, well, that's it. But if you have a lens with a mushroom, put it aside the rest, because it can actually contaminate your other lenses, okay? But if there's some mushroom, don't buy it, okay? So I think this is more or less the whole story. My conclusion, is it worth buying them? Yes, I think it is. I think it's a good option to get a different look, probably affordable lenses, and it's better to have this like Takuma said for that price than the equivalent to this digital lens for that price. The quality is far better. So if you're not in a rush for focusing and you can do manual focusing, this is a really good option. So I hope this video helped you a bit. If you think it may help other people, please share it on social networks. If you have not done yet, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. There's a small button down here and also a small bell. If you click on it, you'll get notified when I upload a new video. My website, erigibaud.com. If you have any question, you can leave a comment below. Send me an email to info@erigibaud.com. Below, I also put links of my gear on Amazon, also links to other parts of my YouTube channel. Thank you very much. Bye.